Welcome back to another episode in our How to Play BattleTech series. In this video, we'll be getting into a denser phase of the game, the movement phase. In the movement phase, players will take turns choosing an eligible mech from their team, choosing a movement mode for that mech, and spending movement points to maneuver that mech around the map. This process is known as a movement selection. There will also be references to rules for later phases of the round, which we'll go to in more detail in those phases videos. I will reference the page in the BattleMech manual these rules can be found as they are brought up. Which mechs may you choose from? An eligible mech is any mech that has not received a movement selection this round and is part of your team. What is a movement mode? These are the ways in which your mech gets around the battlefield. The available movement modes are standing still, walking, running, and jumping. Standing still is the option to leave this mech as is this round. If you stand still, that means your mech stays in its hex and keeps its original facing. This will generate no heat and will add nothing to your attacker movement modifier or to your target movement modifier in combat phases. Walking is the option to cautiously move your mech on the map. A walking mech can spend movement points up to its walking MP rating. This is the slower option and likely won't make you much harder to hit, but will only add a +1 to your attacker movement modifier in the combat phases, and generates a single heat total for movement in the heat phase. Walking is a ground movement, which means your mech can only move forward or backward and will need to spend movement points to change its facing for a turn. A quick note on walking. Mechs with only a single leg can only choose to stand still or walk. Running is the faster way to get your mech around the map. A running mech can spend movement points up to its running MP rating. It will make it harder to accurately hit targets in the combat phases, with an attacker movement modifier of +2, as well as generating 2 heat total for movement in the heat phase. Like walking, running is ground movement, which means your mech can only move forward and will need to spend movement points to change its facing for a turn. Unlike walking, you cannot run backward. Some quick notes on running. A mech's running movement points are calculated at 1.5 times their walking movement points, rounded up. Any game effects affecting the movement points of a mech will need its running movement points recalculated with this formula. If the mech has received critical hits to its gyro or hip, running will force a piloting skill roll. We will cover PSRs in just a moment. Mechs cannot enter a depth 1 or deeper water terrain hex while running. The jumping movement mode is unique in that it can ignore terrain types and occupied hexes it jumps over. As such, it can ignore any PSRs the terrain it jumps over may require. This does not include the terrain in the hex the mech lands in. A jump can be performed in any direction. Since it ignores terrain types, it only costs a total of 1 movement point to enter any legal hex. A mech may choose to jump and land in the same hex it started in for 1 MP. A mech may land facing in any direction. The height a mech is limited to jumping up is equal to the level of the terrain it is on plus its jumping movement points, but a mech can jump down any level of hexes. Jumping must also be performed via the shortest path to the mech's destination. Some notes on jumping. A mech's jumping movement points are equal to the amount of jump jets it has installed. There are different and more advanced types of jump jets, but the standard jump jet is the most common. If a mech begins their turn standing in a depth 1 water terrain hex or deeper, keep in mind submerged jump jets cannot be fired, meaning a depth 1 hex will have the mech's legs submerged, so any jump jets located there cannot fire. Equipment locations are found on the record sheet's critical hit table. Each of these movement modes have their own movement points allocated to them. This is essentially the maximum currency you can spend on the movement of your choice each turn. You can find the available movement points for your mech on its record sheet in the mech data section. Keep in mind, many mechs do not have jump jets installed on them, and will have 0 jumping MP. Also remember, any game effects that reduce MP reduces walking MP. The available running MP will need to be recalculated with the formula mentioned before. Before we continue, let's go over the basics of what a piloting skill role, or PSR, is. Every mech has a mech warrior piloting it, and those pilots have 2 skills, one of which is the piloting skill. The other is gunnery, which we'll cover later in the weapon attack phase video. Unless a campaign or scenario being played states differently, the default piloting skill is 5. Anytime a PSR is needed, you calculate your target number by adding 5 to any modifiers included for that event or action. After your target number is determined, roll 2d6. If the roll total meets or beats the target number, the roll is a success. If it is below, there are consequences, typically resulting in a fall. The piloting skill roll table lists all the basic causes of a PSR and the modifiers they add. We will cover falls in a later video. Now that we understand what the various movement modes are and how they work, let's take it to the battlefield. The basics of how to move your mech is as follows. It always costs 1 MP to enter a new hex, and it costs 1 MP to rotate your mechs facing one hex side. However, your mechs will run into a handful of special rules for level changes and terrain types, most of which create additional movement costs. Let's explore these. A quick note on where to see a list of all the basic movement costs is on the movement costs table. The A Game of Armored Combat box set, a great place to start your BattleTech journey, comes with a large card that has all of the most common tables needed for the action found in a basic game of Classic BattleTech, including the tables mentioned in this video, such as the movement costs and PSR table. The movement costs table can also be found on page 17 of the Battle Mech manual. The PSR table can be found on page 54. Not all ground is level on the typical BattleTech map sheet, and it tends to cost extra MP to change levels using ground movement, such as walking or running. A mech can change levels at a cost of +1 MP per level change to a maximum of 2 levels at a time. For instance, a mech can move from a ground level hex, or level 0, directly to a level 1 hex. If the level 1 hex is clear, meaning no other unique terrain types are present, this will add a +1 modifier to the movement point cost for a total of 2 MP, +1 MP for entering a new hex, and +1 MP for a single level change. If a mech moves from a level 1 hex to a level 3 hex, again, assuming the level 3 hex is clear, this will add a +2 modifier to the movement point costs for a total of 3 MP, +1 MP for entering a new hex, and +2 MP for a double level change. The cost is the same for moving down levels, such as moving from a level 3 hex to a level 1 hex will still cost 3 MP. Now, if the level difference is greater than 2, that movement is not possible with ground movement. For example, let's say a mech wants to move from a ground level hex to a level 3 or higher hex. That move would be illegal. Now let's look at the extra costs for some unique terrain types. We will also go over what the rules are in the movement phase for these terrain types. If a hex has no unique terrain icon on it or no text indicating a unique terrain type, it is considered a clear hex. Keep in mind as we go through these, the MP cost is cumulative with other costs, so these modifiers are potentially in addition to other modifiers, such as level changes. Here are the most common terrain types. Light woods. These cost +1 MP to enter. Heavy woods. These cost +2 MP to enter. Light jungle. These cost +2 MP to enter and trigger a PSR with a +1 modifier. Heavy jungle. These cost +3 MP to enter and trigger a PSR with a +2 modifier. Pavement. These don't cost anything extra to enter, but can potentially cause skidding. If a mech is running and makes a facing change on pavement with the intention of entering a new hex in the same movement phase, this will require a PSR to determine if the mech skids. The PSR modifier depends on the total number of hexes moved before the triggering facing change, which is found on the PSR table. If the PSR is successful, the mech can continue its movement as intended. If it fails, the mech will fall and skid. A PSR must be made each time the same mech tries to do another turn with the same conditions, even on the same turn. Rough. These cost +1 to enter. Rubble. These cost +1 to enter and trigger a PSR with no modifier. Sand. These cost +0 to enter and trigger a PSR with a +1 modifier. Some hexes may contain multiple terrain types. These modifiers are cumulative with each other and level changes. These are the most common terrain types you will find on a typical battle map, except for water, which has many unique rules we will go over next. Water hexes are labeled with a depth number. If no depth is listed, the level of water is considered 0 and does not impede a mech's movement unless playing with certain weather conditions rules. Remember, a mech cannot run into a depth 1 or deeper water hex, though it may run to change facing, or move from a water hex to a land hex. Minimum movement rules, to be covered in a moment, can override this. Depth 0. These cost 0 MP to enter and do not require a PSR. Depth 1. These cost +1 MP to enter and require a PSR with a -1 modifier. A standing mech at this depth has its legs submerged and is considered to have partial cover, a rule to be covered in the weapon attack phase video. If a mech is prone at this level, it is completely submerged. Depth 2. These cost +3 MP to enter and require a PSR with no modifier. A standing mech at this level or deeper is completely submerged. Depth 3 and deeper. These cost +3 MP to enter and require a PSR with a +1 modifier. Keep in mind, these MP modifiers are in addition to the level change costs. If a mech has a location which is missing all its armor, submerged, that location is flooded. All flooded limbs, as well as their internal components, become non-functional. If the flooded section contains engine slots, they are treated as critical hits to these slots. If the cockpit is flooded, the mech warrior inside is considered killed and the mech destroyed. These effects remain after the mech exits the water. Those are the movement phase rules for basic terrain types. Let's take a quick look at occupied hexes, meaning hexes containing another mech. While a mech may move through a hex containing a friendly mech, it may not do so if the hex contains an enemy mech unless jumping. You may not end your turn in the same hex as another mech. There are exceptions to these rules when attempting a physical attack, to be covered when we go over the rules of the physical attack phase. While this is technically not a movement mode, a mech may also choose to go prone during the movement phase. It can do this in addition to performing its move as long as it has the MP to do so. If the mech did not jump that turn, it may spend 1 MP to lay on the ground. The mech keeps its original facing when doing so. When prone, a mech can only change facing or attempt to stand. It cannot crawl to another hex. To attempt to stand, a player must spend 2 MP for each attempt, then perform a PSR. A successful roll means the mech stands up and may choose its facing at no additional MP cost, and continue using any remaining MP it has. A failed PSR causes a 0 level fall. If a mech starts its movement phase prone, and it wishes to stand that turn, the player must announce the movement mode the mech will use prior to the PSR. Attempting to stand generates 1 heat for each attempt on top of the heat generated by the movement mode it chose. Some more notes on standing up. If a biped mech attempts to stand, but is missing one of its legs, it may only make one attempt to do so per turn. The movement mode required for this is running, even though technically one-legged mechs can only walk. A mech with only one MP may make an attempt to stand using the minimum movement rules covered later in this video. Next, let's look at the minimum movement rule. If a mech intends to only enter the hex directly in front of it, this rule can be an exception to the MP required to normally do so. The three conditions it must meet are: it is not prohibited from entering the hex due to a level change. The mech has at least one MP to spend that movement phase. Only entering the hex in front of it without a facing change is the only movement it makes that turn. The movement mode the mech needs to use is running. That being said, this is an exception to the running into water rules. However, a mech must still make any required PSRs. Next, let's go over mech height. All mechs, no matter their specifications, are 2 levels high in game terms. This means a mech standing at ground level is the same height as a level 2 hill. If a mech goes prone, they are now considered to be the same height as a level 1 hill. Let's go over a handy way to keep track of your movement data. A lot of players use colored movement dice to signify the movement mode it used. White for walking, black for running, red for jumping. The color reminds the controlling player what their attacker movement modifier will be in the combat phases. The pips on the top of the die can be used to signify any target movement modifiers for that mech in the combat phases based on how far it moved and if it jumped. That's going to do it for this video on the basics of the movement phase. I hope you enjoyed watching and learning with me today. Please understand, I am genuinely grateful for you watching. Please give a thumbs up if you liked the video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Comments are always welcome and feedback considered. And remember, like the Major always says, information is ammunition.